Welcome to the Exploring Awareness podcast. Join Dr. Frank Anderson and Lisa Berry in exploring new ways to live in this chaotic world and find peace and joy in the most unlikely places.
Hello and welcome to the Exploring Awareness podcast, a place of peace and love and conversation to bring us all to a better understanding of how to move through life, aware of ourselves and what's possible. I'm Lisa. Frank, how are you doing?
Lisa, I'm doing well. You know, the world is still chaos out there.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And our tagline was find peace and joy in the most unlikely places. So we've got a challenge today.
And who would have thought it would have gotten, I don't know, as worse an okay word to use, more complicated. How about that? But before we dive in, I want to tell everyone up front that we have an email account and we would love to hear from you. We're getting emails at exploringawareness@gmail.com. And if you want to send some feedback or share how you're doing, we'd love hearing from you. In fact, next episode, we'll share from some people that we've heard from. So please write us at exploringawareness@gmail.com. I would think this is a time we really need to feel some connection. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. We get a lot of feedback on the podcast, and it's great to hear that people are listening, and we're all kind of going through this together. And, there's a connection anyway, connection
Right.
of all of us. And it's nice to put that into words.
So here we are going through a pandemic, and we know we have listeners all over the world, which we're very, very grateful for. But in the United States, it's a time of great unrest right now. A lot going on along the lines of race and inequities and police situations. And I'm finding, Frank, that I've learned a lot from these conversations about how to stay calm and find our joy, but I'm finding that even more challenging than ever. So is it a matter of uncovering something, or how do we become more calm in these very tumultuous times?
Well, isn't it interesting, Lisa? We started this podcast, let's say the end of January, early February of 2020. And, our goal was to kind of lay out this idea of awareness. And so the first, I think, 6 episodes lay out things like being aware of the breath, being aware of the body, being aware of the thoughts, being aware of emotions, and even being aware of awareness. And we were taking our listeners, through these steps and discussing the different points about discovering our truer, deeper selves, our wisdom selves. We've called it essence. We've called it home. We've called it inner resource. We've called it inner strength. We've used the words peace and love and joy and equanimity. And so there's ways that cultivating that part of us that doesn't change no matter what the situation, the inner dimension, the inner resource, it was applicable when we got the coronavirus pandemic, which we still have, and it's going to be applicable in this situation as well. But this situation is much more complicated because there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of cultural conditioning that goes into this. And so it's more difficult to tease this out, but there's no question in my mind that the inner resource, is the place we can cultivate and move forward in this situation.
And when we've talked about that before, we've talked about your inner joy, as you have taught us that the joy is always there, right? We just cover it up. And in case you don't know what we're talking about, we've had some racial inequality in the United States. A man died under the knee of a police officer who held him there for 9 minutes. In case you haven't heard, there's been demonstrations, some peaceful, some not so peaceful, all over the United States. And it's really bringing a 400 or 500-year-old situation to a head at a time where we're already dealing with a pandemic. And we're in Michigan, and there's been floods and fires, and it really makes you wonder what is really happening right now. So Frank taught me, and hopefully if you've listened to earlier episodes, he says the joy is always there, right?
Yes.
And we just cover it up. So if you want to get to the joy, you have to find the way to get to the joy. And at this point, I don't know. I would have to say I almost feel guilty feeling joy, but I really would like to find my inner calm. Is that near joy?
Right. Well, yes. And what is joy? Joy is different than happiness. This is not a happy situation.
Right.
By any means. And, and joy and happiness are very different. And we do have to kind of tease this out a little bit, because I'm not saying you need to be happy about this,
right,
but there is a joy in grasping the truth of the situation. Now, when we talk about there's joy there, but it gets covered up, sometimes it's only covered up, by a thin layer of your own discursive thoughts, right? I mean, if you're upset about a particular situation, perhaps if you look at it deeper, there's maybe one layer to go down to kind of say, oh yeah, but I'm okay, and, connect to that inner joy. Now we've got many, many, many more layers on top of this, that I guess the word dig deeper, is a word to use. And the other thing we've talked about in this podcast, and I know you like this, is the reaction versus response.
Yeah, I think we cannot talk about that too much. I really don't.
Right. And so it's kind of related to the way you're asking about, kind of joy and peace and equanimity and generosity. And what we've been saying in this approach is that when you cultivate your inner wisdom and your inner self, you move around the world in a different way. And so you respond to what is happening. And so when you look at what's really happening out there and what started all this, based in, like you said, hundreds of years of inequity and institutional racism and social structures that keep people from progressing, and all these things that it's easy in certain people's bubble not to see, but you see this being brought up to the surface, and you see thousands and thousands of people responding. They're responding in a very authentic way, in a very sincere way. They're taking themselves out into the street, and they are making it known that this is not acceptable, that this doesn't fit in the moral, ethical framework that people know, from their inner wisdom, that should be the case. I mean, I think that's very clear. And the majority of what's happening out there are people responding. And I think we can't forget that, because what we see is people reacting.
Right.
People reacting with violence and looting and all these things, and and people reacting against them, and then people reacting against that, and reacting, right? Being pulled around by the nose by this, that, and the other thing. And certainly when you watch television and you hear what gets the most attention is the reactions. There's a way that when other people react, that just, gets you to react. And probably you may have been sitting in the television. Maybe you're reacting with extreme sadness, that makes you feel paralyzed. Or you might react with such anger that you want to go out and, do the same thing. And people have true feelings about things. But the reaction is different than the response. The reaction is coming from conditioning, what you think ought to be right, and it doesn't come from a wisdom place. How can looting a store, turning a police car over, shooting, and all these things come from a wisdom place? It's the response, when people are peacefully presenting themselves in opposition to these larger structural things, that to me is a response.
Seems like a lot of people are angry and a lot of people are fearful, and we have a lot of negative emotion rearing up in the United States right now. What is the medicine or the solution for that?
Yeah, no doubt. And as we've talked about before, that's a normal thing that happens to us, to have emotions around these things. And so today, George Floyd's brother, was out in Minneapolis speaking to the crowds. And he's mourning. Obviously, he's in the middle of his mourning, but he's also talking about reaction versus response,
Right.
and certainly he's not only is he grieving and mourning, those emotions are happening in him, but he's also saying that his brother and he do not want people destroying the community over this. They don't want people doing violence. They want, something else to change. And so as we look at this and emotions are gonna well up, we're gonna need, well, we don't need to do anything, but there is an option here. Okay, instead of getting pulled around by emotions, what if, it's nice to meditate, to do this when you stop back and you take a look at your emotions and become aware of the emotions. You become aware of the fear. I think episode 7 was about fear of the coronavirus. Becoming aware of these things and resting as awareness. Now, that sounds difficult, and it sounds like it's not possible because your brain is saying, well, how is that possible? We have all these things going on, and my brain is being pulled here, 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 here. No doubt that's happening, and that's not going to stop. But there's another layer, there's another potential, there's another opportunity for us to be aware of the fear, to be aware of the sadness, and to be, aware of the anger. Now, from that place of awareness, okay, that's where you'll start to connect to the deeper wisdom. That's the place where you connect to the inner strength. That's the place that's being covered up by all of these things. And that is the place that's motivating you, that's driving you. Then there's an opportunity to do something different, and to actually, there's generosity there, there's love there, there's peace, and there's joy. Maybe you'll go out and start a podcast. Maybe you can go to a peaceful march. Maybe you can go to a city council meeting. Maybe you can be a political worker for your candidate of choice, or any other possibility that you might think of that would be a wise and effective way to respond to this. Once you can become aware of those things, then you're freed up. You're not confined by all those emotions.
Okay, so you're aware of them, and let me just say, I'll just be honest. I'm pretty much a follower and a believer in all these things that you say, and it's not a thing, it's just a way of being, and it's awareness, and I hear you and I've learned from it. But because there's so much happening right now, it kind of catches up with me, like at the end of the day. And you mentioned you're connecting to your inner strength, and I think that's what I'm looking for. Is that through meditation and just having that river of calm flowing through you, or how do you connect to your inner strength?
Yeah, so it's there. It's always there. It's there in everyone, absolutely everyone. It's actually in every person that's doing violence and everyone who's not doing violence. It doesn't matter what things you're doing. It doesn't matter what's going through your brain. It doesn't matter how you're reacting. All of those things happen. They're all kind of brain things. They're all kind of trained things. They're part of your group. They're part of your upbringing. They're part of how you think things ought to happen. So all of that's happening, kind of in a very small, confined, set of reactions and habits and conditioning. So when we talk about going beyond that, get understanding what makes you do those things, the connecting to that deeper awareness is as stable and calm as space, as the whole universe. And we all share that, and we all have that unity. That's why there's when I see people doing all this violence, I mean, there's also a sense of compassion for their situation that leads them to do that. I mean, I certainly don't condone it, but from this place, from this awareness place, you can see, well, that they're doing that because they've got these ideas that they picked up somewhere along the way, that this is how you ought to act, and this is how you make change, and they're not correct. When you've got other leaders, thinking, well, if they're going to do this, then I got to do this back because that's the correct thing to do. But you also have the fantastic police chiefs that are marching with people, with all the peaceful protesters. But you ask, how do you get to that? And then you also use the word believe, I just want to back up to that and say this isn't about beliefs, because this is about personal experience. It's about knowing. So there's nothing to believe here. There's only an opportunity to know, and it's everyone's personal opportunity, might I say responsibility, to get to know that place. And actually, it's extremely important, because the more people that can wake up from this delusion of thoughts, this delusion of all these ideas, they're not going to go away, and you're not going to be a weak person because of this. Believe me, you'll be a lot stronger. I used to teach Sunday school at the Buddhist temple, and we had a little saying. It said, a peaceful person makes a peaceful family. And a peaceful family makes a peaceful neighborhood. And a peaceful neighborhood makes a peaceful city. And a peaceful city makes a peaceful state. And a peaceful state makes a peaceful country. A peaceful country makes a peaceful earth. A peaceful earth makes a peaceful universe. And so, that's what we taught the kids. But it is so, so true, because what else can we do but first find peace within ourselves? Mm-hmm. And we need enough people who can do that to kind of increase the number of peaceful people so that, other people can learn from them. That's really so, so important. We need a threshold number of people, and that's how the world is going to change. There's another Buddhist saying that I like. There's different Buddhist books, and one is called the Dhammapada, and it's one of the most common ones. And there's a really interesting kind of quote from that book. And again, this isn't a religious thing necessarily, but you see, the one thing about Buddhism is they don't want you to believe anything, but if it makes sense to you, then use it. So here's what I'm going to read. It's from the Dhammapada, and it says, "Look how he abused me and beat me, how he threw me down and robbed me. Live with such thoughts, and you live in hate. Abandon such thoughts and live in love. In this world, hate never yet dispelled hate. Only love dispels hate. This is the law, ancient and inexhaustible."
That is such a powerful thought, that hate does not dispel hate.
How could it? Hate just makes more hate. At some point, someone's got to switch over to love. Now, I like the phrase before that, and they say abandon such thoughts and live in love. And we've talked about before, you can't abandon your thoughts. You can't make yourself stop thinking. But when you become aware of your thoughts, those things tend to drop because you're no longer identifying with thoughts. You're identifying with the awareness of the thoughts. And when you identify with awareness of thoughts, what's that space? It's that space of love and peace and joy and generosity. So beyond thoughts, being aware of thoughts opens up this place of love. And then you move in a different lane where you're responding instead of reacting.
So let me ask the practical questions, because I have several, but I've been trying to let you speak because I thought those were such beautiful thoughts. How do you become, and I know we've discussed it, but it never hurts to go over it again. How do you become aware of your thoughts to get to that place?
That's an interesting way you ask that question. I'm just gonna play around with it for a second.
All right. Well, for me, it's like, I hear you and I want what you're giving. And yes, those are such great thoughts and they're so beautiful and necessary, but how do we get there? You talked before about be a peaceful person. How do you become a peaceful person? I'm trying to be really practical here because I want other people to be able to do this as well.
I think so. And I think this situation brings up that question is because if someone, it's just like turn the other cheek. It's like, exactly. It's the same type of thing, isn't it? Turn the other cheek. And there's really this is not about being passive and it's not about letting people walk all over you. Absolutely not. It's about finding your true strength. That your strength doesn't come from hate. Your strength comes from wisdom. But when you said the way you asked the question still talks about like, well, how do you do it? And there is a technique, but it's not, it doesn't work in the way that we would normally expect things to work. It's not like you do this and you'll get this, because it's more subtle than that, right? And so we are in our culture like take a pill or do this, and sometimes mindfulness, can be that way. If you do mindfulness, you'll be more relaxed.
Yeah.
So, and that's partly true. But when we're talking about exploring awareness, there has to be a way where you can be in a place where you start to cultivate awareness. And once you kind of know what that is, then it starts to grow more. It starts to present itself more in your daily life. And so in our podcast and the way that we're talking about it, how do you become aware? How do you become more conscious? How do you become, kind of connected to your inner resource? You got to take some time out of your day and sit. And the way we do it here is we start with the breath, because the breath is always there. And just start becoming aware of the breath. And then, of course, thoughts are going to come up. You'll become distracted by the thoughts. Become aware of the thoughts. Emotions are going to come up. Become aware of the emotions. And give yourself a break. And then see what happens, right? And so in the process of doing that, you will start to notice an opening to something deeper. And so I can't tell you how to do it, but I can kind of be a guide to that place for you, because it really is something that you have to do on your own. It really is something that people can tell you, dance around it, but your own personal experience, that isn't something that you think up. It's not top down, but this place will start to open. And I know that you've had that experience, Lisa.
Well, I know we've discussed it. And so you're just like, you're in a moment, and it's going to the respond versus react thing, right? Instead of just jumping in and feeling a negative emotion, just stop and breathe and think about your breath, and that will make you more peaceful, and you'll get to that peaceful feeling just by being aware of that very moment. Is that what you're saying? That's a very good start. You can't say that too often. I think it's a great reminder. And that's why I love talking about responding versus reacting, because in my own life and in my own world, I'm surrounded by a lot of reactors versus responders, and I don't like it. And I try to talk about, respond versus react, and then we'll all be so much more peaceful. But again, you can't tell anyone else how to be. So then, and I know we've talked about it many, many times, and when you it doesn't hurt to be reminded of it, because I think for you to read that lovely thought about be a peaceful person and you'll have a peace, it's great. Yes. But again, remind us, please, how to be a peaceful person.
The funny thing is we are all peaceful people. It's like, it's funny. Someone I was talking with the other day said, we're trying to solve a problem that we don't even have. We actually don't have this problem. We think we have this problem. We've been trained to have this problem, but actually we're trying to solve a problem that we don't have. And that's why I like that term return home. It's like I was delivering a baby the other day and I was looking at that little baby and I was like, that baby is unconditioned and it just right there and just as peaceful and happy as can be. And that's how we all came into the world. We came into the world as peaceful, loving, happy little, people. And as we grew up, we learned a lot of, good information that we can use to help the world. We also learned prejudice. We learned preconceived ideas. We learned judgments. We learned norms. We learned all of these things that in some cases took away from our joy and from our happiness. We learned maybe that we had to do things in a certain way to make sure our parents loved us. We might have learned to do things in a certain way so that we could, stay in our religious groups. There's a lot of things that we learned along the way. But, is that who you really are? Or is that what someone else told you that you are? I mean, how does racism come up? I mean, how, people learn that. That's not part of your nature. You learn that from your parents and from your societies and from your groups. People learn how to make policies based on that as well for national policies. Maybe some people feel like the only thing I need to do in life is make money at whatever cost. And they've learned that. That is not awareness. That is not part of inner wisdom. It's way far from that. But you learn these things, and that becomes this reality that isn't actually true. All of these problems are created. You actually don't have a problem at your core. Does that make sense?
Is it something you unlearn?
Well, you can't really unlearn it. You just have to become aware of it. So when you know the things that are making you tick, when you become aware of it, then you connect to that deeper part of you that says, oh, that's why I do that. Do I really want to be selfish? Do I really want to be, promote inequity and racism? Do I really think that the world is only about me and making money, So.
Well, all right, I'm going to stop you there because I think a lot of people do. So not judging, but just observing. So how do you get to a place where you realize all this? Do you have to want to?
Yeah, that's a great question. You do have to want to. If people are listening to this podcast and they're like, my life feels like it's fearful, like it's not authentic, like it's going crazy and haywire, and there must be another way, this is what we're talking about. Yeah, there's some people who don't have any interest in that. You're absolutely right.
So that's one of the reasons we do this podcast, so people can hear about it and perhaps learn about it and get on a more peaceful path?
If that's what they'd like to do, absolutely. So a lot of people are looking for something deeper, something more. And a lot of people have had religions, and a lot of religions do a good job at helping people connect to that deeper part of them. I'm not anti-religion, but some people don't find that in their religions. And actually, when I learned about this, I was still practicing Catholicism, and I'm like, I really understood the spiritual aspects of Catholicism a lot more when I started to meditate. I think I told you before, at that entrance to that meditation center in Thailand, it says, may you find the heart of your own religion. And so people who are part of religious communities and happy about it can go deeper into that through these techniques. But there's some people who don't have a religion, or who have left religions, or they've felt like that religion wasn't right for them, which is also fine. What's your access point to something deeper? And that's why I think that people are looking for that. And sometimes they don't even know they're looking for it because they don't know that there's even an option. But you've heard of people who get put in jail for life and they wake up in jail. Oh my gosh, now I realize that I did all of those things because I wanted to be part of the gang. I wanted to be included. I didn't have a father. I didn't have a community. And these people took me in, and I kind of got brainwashed into doing all these things. And then you see it later on, right? So how do you see it? So if you're out judging people, or even if you're being really passive and you're not even paying attention to this, that might not feel right either. So, without being hard on yourself and without judging yourself, because that's another thing that doesn't happen with awareness. You allow thoughts and emotions to just come as they are and become aware of that. And that's why it may not be relaxing, because you may have to face things that you've kept down for a very long time. Frequently they can be resolved. Sometimes you need some help to resolve that.
This reminds me of one of my favorite quotes about it's never too late to become who you are or what you want to be.
Yes.
It's never too late. Every day is a new day. It's another opportunity. And one thing that you said, strength comes from wisdom. I love that. That's so amazing. I wish there was this one takeaway. Well, how can we summarize this? What can we say to people? I think what you said about looking at the newborn baby and you don't come into the world with racism. You don't come into the world with hate, and you don't come into the world with judgment. You come in pure, and all those things are learned, I guess. But I wish there was one way. What can we say to people to make them aware of that? I mean, we were going to put out a quote or a slogan or a one little message that might tempt people to really hear that. Is there a way you could summarize it, or what you would say? I mean, pretty well said it already.
The phrase that comes to my mind is, you aren't who you think you are. If you're thinking, right, then you've got this whole story. Yeah. And so when you become aware of the thoughts, that's who you are. It's not what you think. It's beyond thought who you really are. That one philosopher said, I think, therefore I am. I mean, that's right. That would be the opposite of what we're talking about. It's really not, because you aren't who you are because you think. You are who you are because you're aware of your thoughts. And all I can do is say those things over and over again, but to experience it. And, in the guided meditation, we'll do that again. And there's always that question of faith, of something deep inside that says, yes, there is something else. I'm going to try. I'm going to try it, and I'm going to try it. And then I'll say, don't try, do. Don't think, just sit. Stop thinking. But I won't say stop thinking, but you might have to stop for a minute. But I want you to sit and be with yourself, no matter what happens in your brain, being aware of it. Now, that's not going to be easy for everyone. That's okay too. But if it's something that you're interested in, connecting to your deeper wisdom, connecting to the interior dimension, it takes a lot of courage, because your brain's got a lot of things to tell you, and some of them are not true. And so your job will be to let that play out, and then see for yourself where that leaves you. And for me personally, that's left me with, the cow without nostrils. So I'm not getting pulled around. I'm not being hijacked by, the people doing the violence, or the people not wearing the masks, because I'm just not going to be, I'm not going to let that affect me. You know, it's happening. It's happening, and we've got to do something about it. But that, you know, we use that word before, being hijacked by the emphasis being placed on people doing all these things that seem evil. Well, actually, that's only what we really need to focus on, is the people doing the things that are peaceful and the people that are doing things to try to change things. And that's where we need to go. But everyone is really more focused on that reactivity, because it kind of breeds more reactivity, and people would like to get into it. It's like, stop and look at what you're doing. And are you really helping to solve the problem? I think some people are trying to create more problems. And hate will never dispel hate. Only love will dispel hate. And as difficult as that sounds, from what we're talking about here, that is the way out. And to connect to love, we're going to have to go deep and find it and not think it. But once we find it, then we express it in our lives in a different lane.
And maybe you shouldn't have to go so deep to find love.
Well, for some people, it's there. It's right there.
Right.
And I know for you, that's been a big driving force in your life.
Well, and then you mentioned faith a few minutes ago, and I feel like I'm hearing today, when you talk about faith, have faith in yourself.
Have faith that there's another way. And living in fear and sadness and anger, there's another way. And my dog Jack agrees. That was called an amen in dog language.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Is it Jack? Is that your dog's name?
Yeah, Jack.
Jack says amen. Yes, all right. A lot of dog lovers out there. They don't hear you necessarily, but if Jack says so, then yeah, we're in. Okay.
Yeah, well, you know, one day we'll be back in the studio and we'll miss all these poor audio recordings and background noises.
Okay, I'm ready to meditate.
Okay, great. Lisa, what do you think you and people would want to work on today in meditation?
Well, when we started this conversation, I was determined to talk about finding our inner calm. But the phrase hate and love and peace, and I was like, we need that so much. And maybe getting to that place or talking about that, or, you know, your choice, dealer's choice. But I don't think you can go wrong with any of those. But I cannot tell you how bowled over I am by that and how I'm feeling it.
Oh, about the hate.
Yeah.
Never dispels hate. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, Martin Luther King used that term as well. And it's so true. It's at a deeper level, you know, than the reactivity level. And certainly people have that urge to go and do something and make themselves and make their things known, but it's not effective.
Well, I think for someone like me, it's been my job to be so immersed in illness from the pandemic and the unrest because of the racist acts, and then to hear that is such an soothing antidote to the whole thing. Is like, we need that. So if you're asking if you want to meditate on something, we could meditate on peace, or we could meditate on love, or meditate on our connecting to our inner calm, or all of the above, because I want to meditate on something that we need, that will help us right now.
Okay. And so what we'll do is we'll meditate and let's make the intention of this meditation to connect to your inner core, to connect to a place that's already there, right? And so what I'd like to do with this meditation is provide something that people can use and whenever they need it. But if you can remember as well, and what I do a lot is I do a quick breath body scan to kind of find you that place. But we'll go over that again, like as we usually do, and I'll do some guiding intention will be to connect to a deeper place that feels authentic to you and isn't proscribed by someone else, even though those things may come up. And if people can do this every day, it's a good practice to start the day with. A chair is fine. I don't recommend laying down because sometimes you can fall asleep. So sitting in your chair upright, again, with the intention of letting whatever is going to happen. With the intention of not judging yourself for anything. So if your mind wanders, you're not doing that wrong. You're doing it right. Because once you know your mind wanders, that's a glimpse of awareness. When your mind is wandering, you're not aware. You're just wandering. And you know right now you're breathing and you're not aware of it. And so that's the coolest thing about the breath is you use that to start, because it's like the breath is unconscious and it's like, oh, I'm actually breathing. And you can say, oh, I'm actually thinking. And who is the I that's saying that? So let's start. You're sitting down and you have your intention, and you're listening to this whenever, but you're still joining Lisa and myself and the other many listeners that are doing this. And you're also joining thousands and thousands of other people who have just starting this or have been doing this for a very long time and could be saying the same things. And I might even just say, welcome, welcome and thank you for trying this out, and encourage you to continue even though it might seem difficult. We need people to be driven by their inner resources. And you can do it. And just be very gentle, compassionate with yourself. And feel your body and your chest. And your chest expands and air goes in your lungs. And then it contracts. And air goes out. And you need oxygen for your body. So that's coming in, and your body produces carbon dioxide, it's going out. It started when you were a little baby. You were unconditioned. And someone helped your mother and brought you out and dried you off, and you started breathing, and your parents were so happy you were breathing and crying. And so let your breath be something to connect you to your innocence. Connect you to that part of you that you've always had. And by just becoming aware of the breath. And again, it's a sense that you're aware of your breath. And this is the doorway to realizing who you are. And again, it's not the thought of it. You can't figure it out. Just let it. Be aware of your breath. And you can be aware of your body. You may have an adult body or a teenage body or someone near the end of their life body. And we all started this little baby body. We all started as one cell, actually. And when we were one cell, you didn't know the sex, you didn't know the race, you didn't know the part of the country, the political affiliation, the mask or no mask. We were all exactly the same. And now you feel your body has grown. Your feet are much bigger now. Your legs, and all your organs in your abdomen, your chest, your hands, your arms, your shoulders. You learned how to walk, how to skills with your hands. Your brain grew. You went to school filled with great information. You learned how to be kind and generous and loving. But you also might have picked up being judgmental, making opinions, thinking there's only one way to do certain things. Very black and white. And that's the human experience. As a child, it was really important sometimes for your parents to make it very clear. And it may have been easy to just carry on that way. But your brain carries all of that with it. And also, right now, there's information coming at you, and the way that it's said, or the assumptions that are made. Just think about all the conflicting information you might see. And just like we're aware of the breath, can be aware of what's going on in our thoughts. And imagine yourself sitting on a cliff and just watching the waves crash against the shore. And those waves are all your thoughts, all the information coming in. And you sitting on the cliff is the awareness. And sitting solid and still while all that water swirls. Can you let the water swirl while you just sit in awareness? And the water can't get you. The water isn't going to take you away. You're stable. You're safe. You're solid. You see what's going on. And a sense of joy arises in the fact that you're just there in the present moment, letting what happens happen. Because it's not you, it's not who you are. There's something way more immense and beautiful than all that swirling chaos and beautiful scenery. All those things are there. But going deeper into your being, when you're looking at the water, you can see there's water coming from this direction and water coming from that direction. There's a wisdom where you see all of these thoughts are coming from. Oh, that's what my father used to say. Do I really believe that? I'm deeper, tapping into this wisdom. It's peaceful. There's something about the ability to watch all this happen that feels peaceful. boulder falls over, something crashes. You stay peaceful. And maybe there's a sense of just love for yourself and the world in all of its chaos and beauty. And so from that place of wisdom and love and understanding and non-judgmentalism, maybe now you can get up and move through the world with those qualities as your purpose. And you'll use your brain as a tool to respond in a way that's right for you, in a way that's authentic for you. And you can get yourself a sturdy raft and go into those waters. And no matter how chaotic that they are, you will remain. This perhaps you've identified this authentic self that moves with wisdom and love and peace and joy and generosity and forgiveness and gratitude. And your essence, drives this raft through all of that chaos. And you'll start to meet other people who are doing the same thing. And together, we continue to move. In unity. And people start to feel it. And they're like, wow, why are you so calm? Why are you effective? Why do you get things done? And they'll feel it. And then you can tell them. So during these meditations, surely your mind will wander. And just like you breathe, minds wander. Just go back to the breath. Be aware of the breath, aware of thoughts. Aware of these emotions that come up. And just see if you can rest as awareness. and rest. And wisdom. And this is the way that love will dispel hate. And so we'll end there now by taking 3 deep breaths. And you can open your eyes and stretch.
Bringing the calm to the chaos. I like that.
Well, the calm is already there.
We always can use the reminders. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It does take a lot of reminders because, we use our thoughts to protect ourselves and to keep things the same way. And it's, it doesn't have to be that way, but it's a practice. That's why we call it practice. We'll just keep doing it.
Well, thank you for all your wise, inspiring words tonight. I know I appreciate it. I hope everybody listening does as well.
I hope so, Lisa. I hope so. I mean, we're all going to do our part to contribute to something. And, this podcast is what we've come up with.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope that it helps. And I hope that we can help inspire some people to do this and work on changing this world.
And if you feel inspired and you want to let us know, you can email us at exploringawareness@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if there's something you want us to talk about or address in an upcoming episode, feel free to let us know there as well. exploringawareness@gmail.com.
Yeah, tell your friends. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter and all those things.
Instagram
as well. And we'll keep doing this and develop these ideas. And as long as we keep having global crises, we'll talk about those. And we've got some other ideas for later on as well. So we're in it to win it. So,
well, thank you so much for listening.
Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.
This podcast is not an attempt to practice medicine or provide specific medical advice, nor does use of this information establish a physician-patient relationship. Listening to this podcast does not replace medical consultation with a qualified health or medical professional to meet the health and medical needs of you or others. If you are having problems, please see your primary care provider or your local mental health professional.